return to the stand and remain on the rows. Defense may cross. Good afternoon, Doctor. How are you?
I'm well. Yourself?
Good, good. I'm going to just ask a few questions to try and clear things up.
Very good.
So we've got 3 gunshot wounds. Gunshot wound A, gunshot wound B, and gunshot wound C.
Yes.
And those were labeled A, B, and C based on their positions.
Correct.
And so gunshot C is the wound to the right side of the head.
It is.
And that gunshot wound would have been fatal.
It is fatal, yes.
Okay. And then we have gunshot wound A, which is in the back and travels frontward and upward and breaks the right scapula and the right humerus.
Yes.
And if I'm remembering, the right scapula is the shoulder bone?
Yes, it is. The shoulder blade.
Okay. And the humerus is?
The upper arm bone.
The upper arm bone, okay.
Yes.
When we talk about paths of bullets, as a forensic pathologist, when you talk about those, is there a position of the body you're talking about when you do that?
Yes, when we're describing the path of the bullet, it's essentially as the pathologist is seeing the patient and then essentially connecting the dots where the entrance is, where the bullet's recovered or an exit, and then connecting, providing there's no ricochets or any deviation. So when the description is back to front, it's from the back of the person to the front, and if it's going upwards, it's going from feet to head. Right to left is pretty self-explanatory.
So I like to think of it, and you can tell me if I like to think of it as we view the person as kind of vertically. So upward means up towards the head, and down means down toward the feet.
Yes.
And right to left, front to back are the same.
Yes.
So gunshot A, the penetrating wound to the shoulder, is traveling from the back to the front.
Yes.
Okay. And it's traveling upward, so
It
it's
is.
traveling from the feet up.
Correct, towards the head.
And you said at a pretty small angle, so it was traveling pretty close to the angle of the body.
I said steep.
Steep? Okay.
So yes, it's essentially near parallel with what the back surface is, but obviously it has to have an acute angle in order to penetrate the skin.
Okay. And gunshot B is the penetrating wound to the back, right upper back, and it travels back to front, downward, and right to left in the body.
It does.
Okay. And so when we talk downward, it's traveling from above the head down into the body. It may not have started above the head, but that direction.
Correct, yes. The entrance is actually the lower part of the neck, the upper part of the upper back, and it's going towards the feet,
Okay.
downwards.
Okay, so hypothetically, if I was standing on it and I was shot in that direction, it would come from above and down.
Yes.
Okay. If I was laying on the ground with my head that way, it would be coming this way.
This way meaning the shooters is in front of you
Yes.
if you're face down and shooting, yes.
Okay. And that bullet, when it entered the body, it didn't go through cleaning, correct?
Correct.
What did it hit?
It hit 4 bones, ribs, and that slowed down the bullet, and it also went through the right lung, the blood vessels, and the bronchus of the lung, which is the airway, and the aorta.
Okay.
And then it stops in the skin, below the skin, near the left nipple.
Okay. And so it hit a number of hard parts of the body going through that would have taken away some of its velocity.
Yes.
And you say it stops below the skin. My understanding is the skin's made up of different layers.
3 layers.
3 layers. Okay. Did it penetrate any of the layers of the skin?
It's not described in the autopsy, but where it is, looking at it, it looks like it's in the fat or in the dermis, which is the lowest part of the skin.
Okay. And your skin is elastic, correct?
It is.
Have you ever seen a time when a bullet did not go through the skin, other than this occasion?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, did not go through the skin?
Yeah, stopped where this one did, didn't break through.
Well, I've seen where bullets have hit the skin and not penetrated.
Okay.
I've seen ones where they've gone through a set of skin or an area of skin and then not exited the other way.
Okay, I guess, Frank, that was a poorly worded question. In this case, it's your opinion that Mr. Hoerig was laying on the floor, and it's the fact he was laying on the floor that stopped the bullet from going through the skin?
Of gunshot wound B, yes.
Okay. And that's your opinion?
It is.
Okay. Is it possible that he was standing up, and because of the number of different items it hit going through, that its velocity was low enough that it didn't have the ability to break through the skin?
It is, yes.
And you talked a little about looking at the bullet size and how that plays into relation to the way you look at wounds, right? Small, medium, and large.
As far as calibers go, yes.
There's a second part to that, and that is the amount of energy that the bullet has, which is caused by the powder, correct?
It is, the gunpowder, yes. And the muzzle of the gun also has, there's other factors, yes.
Okay. And so, for example, a .22 long rifle round shot out of a pistol has very little muzzle velocity and very little penetrating.
It has very little velocity, yes, compared to other bullets.
Right. Compared to often the larger bullets.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you familiar with a .223 round?
Yes.
And that's almost the same size as a .22 long rifle.
Yes.
But it has a much bigger casing and a lot more velocity, right?
It has a lot more velocity because it has a lot more gunpowder that burns and puts the energy to pushing the bullet down, the muzzle of the gun, yes.
Okay. And so if you shoot somebody with a .22 long rifle round out of a pistol, you wouldn't expect it to go through the body?
Well, it depends on what parts are hitting. So it can, depending on how close the muzzle of the gun is to the body or what it hits. So I can't say with a blanket statement that it will or will not.
But you would, in contrast, if somebody was shot with a .223 round out of a rifle, that would cause a lot more damage and have a higher probability of going through.
Yes.
So when you talked about small, medium, and large rounds, that's helpful, but that's not the whole picture in deciding how much penetration there's going to be.
Right.
Now, you talked about the fact that it was your opinion that Carl didn't fall down the stairs, correct?
Yes.
Did you go to the scene and observe the stairwell?
I did not.
Were you ever given any measurements of the stairwell?
I think I was, but I did not memorize or know exactly what they were.
Okay. And your opinion is, because you didn't see any marks or abrasions, he didn't fall down the stairs, striking the stairs?
Correct.
It was the testimony that you saw that Ms. Hoerig said that she shot him on the third stair. Correct? You watched the video of it?
I did.
Okay. If he fell down the stairs and instead of hitting any of the stairs, he just fell and then landed on the landing where the carpet is, would that change your opinion about whether there would be bruising or not?
No, because if I may continue,
Yes.
the floor is also a flat object, so there would be bruising from him striking that floor, or abrasions, which are scuff marks.
The next question is bruising. If an individual is dead, do they bruise?
Generally, no. There are some rare exceptions that a dead person can bruise, but the vast majority of bruises happen while the heart is beating.
Okay. Gunshot wound B is the penetrating gunshot wound. It went through and struck the aorta, correct?
It did.
That wound could have caused fairly instantaneous death?
Not instantaneous, but quick. So
what do you mean by quick?
Sure. Very few gunshot wounds actually cause instantaneous death. The one in Mr. Hoerig's head will cause instantaneous death because it goes through the brain in the vital time. The one that goes through his chest, the gunshot wound B, it goes through the lung and the aorta. That's going to result in a quick death. meaning that the heart is still going to be able to beat, and he's not going to die until all of the blood is squeezed out of the blood vessels.
Okay.
So in that type of a wound, it's going to take seconds to a few minutes in order to die. A few minutes, certainly less than 5 minutes with a wound like that.
Okay. But it could be as quick as a few seconds.
Seconds, yes.
And again, once a person is dead, they don't generally breathe.
Generally, they don't, yes.
I may just have a moment down. You talked about stippling on the wound in the head, correct?
I did.
And you estimated that it was between 12 and 24 inches?
From the muzzle of the gun
Yeah.
to the surface of the skin, 12 to 24 inches, yes.
And I assume you gave that variable because that range can change on make and model of the gun,
Yes,
can change on the load, the different sort of bullets that are used.
right.
Okay. And so that's why you gave a range.
Yes,
You didn't do any testing on the gun in question or any the ammunition to see what the actual range could be.
I did not.
And then in terms of where Mr. Hoerig was found, you stated that the red parts of his body was livor mortis,
Yes,
and that's where the body is touching the floor. Or no, livor mortis, that's where it's not touching the floor.
very good. So that's gravity, essentially.
Right.
Livor mortis is going to settle towards gravity. So where it's purple and red in the photographs, his body is not touching the floor when he's dead. And so the blood is settling to that. Where it's white and blanched, he's up against a solid object, and it's either the floor or if his arm was folded underneath, I believe it was, it caused a little pattern of his arm.
I'm going to show you, Dr. Exhibit H1 and see if you recognize that.
I do.
And what is it?
Exhibit H1 is the photograph of the where the bullet is recovered in the left chest area.
Okay, and that would be bullet B.
Yes.
Okay. On that picture, you can also see the livor mortis.
Yes.
Is the bullet in the area that shows livor mortis or the white area?
Both.
Both?
Yes.
So where the bullet is, where he was resting, the bullet was both in an area that was touching and not touching?
Well, where the actual wound of B, and I described in my initial exam, there's a small dark red area. That's in the area of non-livor mortis, the blanching. So that part is in contact with the floor. A competent forensic pathologist will not cut directly over the bullet because they don't want to score it with their instrument, and that can induce artifacts so that the ballistics expert can have some issues with that. So Dr. Germanick cut near the bullet and then squeezed it out, which is standard of care.
I just have one question. Do you have an opinion as to the position of the deceased body when he was shot with gunshot wound A?
I do.
And would you tell the jury that?
Judge, overruled. That's beyond the scope of...
Did you address that when you were direct?
Yeah, you addressed it.
Overruled. Go ahead, Max.
Gunshot wound A is the penetrating wound that is in his right upper back, and it goes into the shoulder area. And as I said, it's at a sharply upward angle. meaning what I can tell is where the gun is in proximity to the body. And so, as we're just talking, I was talking just recently about it's going upwards in very almost perpendicular, parallel with the surface of the skin. So that means that the gun has to almost be like at the level of his rear end in order to get it at that angle there. In order for him to have that, and we do the autopsy with a person lying flat, but the body certainly moves and bends while they're alive. And so in order to have that, he would be crouched, he could be, and my opinion, he is, crouched over, leaning forward in order to get that steep acute angle going upwards into his right shoulder area.
How about this?
So if the prosecutor is bending this way and he's leaning forward, then with the entrance, may I demonstrate, Your Honor? With the entrance on his upper right back area, and it's going, when he's laying on the floor, his chest is parallel to the ground. Yes. So then the gun is parallel to the ground.
That's all I have now. Thank you. You may step down, Doctor.
All right,
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes.
Dan Henry.
Good afternoon.
Before we start, can I get information?
Daniel Henry.
Been waiting a while, huh? You've been here a while. Thank you very much. Dan, would you please give your full name and address?
Daniel Henry, 7279 Darien Drive, Hudson, Ohio.
And what occupation do you have, Mr. Henry?
I am an Air Force pilot and an airline pilot.
And what is your rank with the Air Force?
Major.
And what year did you enter the Air Force of the United States?
1994.
And would you tell the jury where you were first licensed and when did you come to this area as a pilot?
First private pilot was 98 in Kent State. And then 1994 I came out to the base, worked as a maintenance guy for about 5 years, and then I went to the flying squadron in 99-ish as a flight engineer, and then pilot training in 2002.
And Major, did you do combat flying?
I'm sorry?
Did you fly in combat missions?
Yes.
And during your service since the mid-90s, did you come to meet a fellow pilot, Air Force member, Carl Hoerig?
Yes.
And when did you first meet Carl?
Somewhere right around 2000.
And did you have a relationship with him since that time?
Absolutely. Once we met, we were good friends for.
And how would you describe your relationship?
Close friends, very good friends. We hung out all the time.
And did you at times go to Germany or to Europe? Where would you go together?
Oh, all over the world.
And what foreign countries did you fly to?
I don't know that we have time for the whole list.
What kind of plane?
All over Europe, Southwest Asia.
Now, I believe currently you're with United Express,
Yes.
and you were where Carl was with Southwest Airlines.
Yes.
And did there come a time that you met Carl's wife, Claudia Hoerig?
Yes.
And do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And would you pick her out, please?
The gray lady at the defense table.
And how long did you know her?
From the time they met until Carl died.
And they were married in 2005?
That sounds about right.
And would you go out together quite a bit?
All of us, including his wife?
Well, would you see him socially?
Yes, absolutely.
That was his wife, and then how frequent would you see them together?
Quite a bit initially. We spent a lot of time together, the whole of us. So probably on a weekly basis.
And you would visit Carl Hoerig's house?
Yes.
And where did he live?
In Newton Falls.
And you've been there how many times over the years?
Oh, I don't even know. A lot of times.
Quite a bit.
Yes.
And I want to take you back in February, the last time that you saw Carl in 2007. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And tell the jury what you were doing when you last saw Major Carl Hoerig alive.
So we were at the base. We either flew that morning or we might have just been working in the office, but we were working at the base. We left there, went to Carl's house. We left my truck. We got Carl's guns and we went to a nearby gun range and spent the afternoon doing some shooting. After that, we came back to Carl's house, and Carl had rented a house on the street, wanted to show it to me, so we went down and did a little tour of the place that he'd rented. And then I think we hung out at his house a little bit, and then I went home.
Did he indicate what he was going to do relative to his relationship with Claudia Hoerig?
Yes, he said it wasn't working out. They were going to get divorced, and he had rented this house for himself to move into until things got settled out.
And he was going to move in that house that he showed you?
Yes.
And approximately what period of time would this be? You remember exact date?
Exact date that I saw?
Before his death, you remember approximately?
It was within a couple of weeks, maybe a week, 2 weeks.
And you went to this house, was it close to his house?
Yeah, very close. I think it was basically down the street and a short, I want to say like a right turn, and it was right there.
So within a block or so?
Half a mile maybe.
Okay.
Quarter mile.
Now, would you describe the house to the jury?
So I was only there the one time, but I remember it was like an A-frame, very small. It was kind of dark and it was empty, so it wasn't
Like an A-frame?
Yes, it was kind of like an A-frame.
Small.
Very small.
And did you go inside?
Yes, we did.
Was it a large area to live in?
No.
And you've been in Carl's split level?
Yes.
Big difference between the two homes?
Very big difference. Yes.
And he told you last time you saw him that he was going to move in that little one?
Correct.
Thank you.
Questions? You may step down. Thank you very much. State the call of next witness.
Gary Dodge, Colonel. Gary Dodge.
Someone swear the testimony about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please have a seat. Make sure no court reporter has your name.
Yes, it's Gary Lee Dodge. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Gary. Would you, for the record, give your full name and address, or at least the area where you're from?
Okay, my name is Gary Lee Dodge. I'm from Ohio, Northeast Ohio, but currently living in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I believe you're in some training school in Wichita, or?
I am. So I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force, and I'm currently at a group commander's leadership course in Texas, and it took a permissive TDY to come here.
So you flew in through the weather last night?
I did. I got in late last night.
How close were you to Carl Hoerig?
One of my best friends.
And when did that friendship begin?
In 1997, after I came out of navigator training, he was already assigned to our unit, and he was the type of guy, our personalities were very similar, and we instantly bonded, and we socialized a lot, both at work and outside of work.
And did you fly missions together?
We did. We flew all over the world. We deployed together to the Middle East, and then we did a lot of local trips just in the United States as well. And
you would socially be with him through those years?
Yes.
Often?
We did things both at work, outside of work. He was at my house regularly. My kids called him uncle. So, yeah, we were very close.
And did you at times, or did you sometime in 2005 meet his new wife, Claudia Hoerig?
I did.
And could you tell the jury when that was, as you can recall?
Well, I remember him talking about it, and he did the online dating thing, and I remember him talking about it. So he told me he met somebody that that he had a fondness for. He liked exotic. When I say exotic, I mean international. He dated a lot of international. 2 or 3 of the girls that I knew that he dated were international. So when he brought up Claudia, it kind of fit that same mold. So right around that same time.
He married real quickly?
He did, very quickly. Not to the point where he didn't give us time to try to talk him out of it, because it was just so quick that I think we would have tried to, maybe no matter who it would have been, that was just a very quick timeline.
And did you see the woman he married, Claudia Hoerig, in the courtroom?
I do.
And would you pick him out, please?
She's in the middle between the two attorneys there, looking down at her paper.
Let the record reflect the defendant has been picked out, please.
This witness has identified the defendant.
Now, this is 2005, and between that and we'll get into March 15th, 2007, approximately how many times did you see them together?
Dozens. I'd been to their house. I spent the night at their house on numerous occasions. We did things socially, my wife and Carl and Claudia. We socialized in groups, both not really military functions, but really any type of social engagement where my wife would have been there. He usually had her there as well.
And he was flying for Southwest Airline, correct?
He was.
In March of 2007.
Yes, sir.
And what were you doing in March of 2007?
So I worked for the Federal Air Marshal Service full-time. That was my full-time job. So I was flying as an air marshal while also flying as a navigator here in Youngstown at the 910th Airlift Wing. So around that timeline, I was probably on leave for the day. I think if you're getting to where that specific timeline, that day I was scheduled to fly here in Youngstown, and I was taking a day off from the air marshals to fly.
Now, though he was flying for Southwest, in that early part of March, would he also come to the Air Force Reserve Base?
Yes, just like I would. There's still requirements that you fly in the evening time and on weekends to keep all of your currencies. So even though he was flying with Southwest, if there was some downtime, he would have scheduled to fly at the base to maintain those currencies as well.
And so you would know when he comes and goes as he would know you. You're good friends.
Absolutely, and we'd see each other on the flying schedule, and we'd actually talk about, hey, I'm flying with you tomorrow, or hey, I see you're at the base tomorrow, and we would, we talked very regularly in maybe 1 or 2 day intervals. We were on the phone usually, just laughing and joking around.
And he's been serving the Air Force. He was since right out of high school.
He was.
And on the weekend of the 10th and 11th, going to Tuesday and Wednesday, right before his body was discovered, did you have some reason to be concerned?
I did. So like I stated a moment ago, we talked regularly. So I want to say it was that weekend. I was trying to convince him. I knew what his plan was going to be to get an apartment possibly, and he was trying to separate himself from Claudia, from the defendant.
And did you make any offer to him?
I did. I offered him. He was at my house a lot. He actually did a lot of construction on my house. He built a special bedroom in my basement for my son. So he was there, very familiar with my house and my kids and my family, and we were, like I said, very close. So I offered him to come stay with me. Why waste the money on an apartment? Just come stay with me. And that would have been on that Sunday afternoon or sometime on that Sunday when we last spoke.
Okay. And he was, when he would go to work or scheduled to go, how reliable was Carl Hoerig?
I would have bet my life he would have been there. I don't ever recall in all the years we flew together him being late, him not showing up. Not showing up was the red flag for me. When I came in to fly on the day I was flying, they said, "Hey, what's going on? He didn't show up last night." And right then and there, first of all, the first alarm that went off in my head was we hadn't talked in a few days. That didn't happen. And then after not talking for a few days, and I'm texting him and calling him, then I walk in to fly, and they said he didn't show up the night before. And right there, I knew something was wrong.
What day was that?
That was a Thursday morning, I believe the 15th was.
So he should have been there Wednesday. He wasn't.
That's correct.
And what did you do?
So I called him and kind of left him a threatening message and just said, "Listen, Carl, I haven't heard from you. I know you're going through a tough time, but if I don't hear from you within the next 30 minutes, I'm going to call the police and have them do a welfare check at your house." And that's what I ended up doing. After 30 minutes, so I'm scheduled to fly, but after not hearing from him, I went ahead and made that call, called a police department, sent them, the Newton Falls Police, to his house. And then I'm talking to the officer on the phone, and the officer got there and basically said, "Yeah, hey, his car's in the driveway, the car's unlocked. His cell phone, I believe, is in the center console." Again, all red flags that told me, okay, something's definitely wrong.
And did you know if Carl's parents were there?
So they weren't there at the time, and what I did is I then called, so I asked the police officer if he can go inside, and being a former police officer myself, I know that, you can't just go off my word to break into someone's house. So I asked them, okay, stay there, I'm going to call Carl's dad and ask him if he would come by, let the police officer inside to do this welfare check. So that's what I did. I called Carl's dad and said, "Look, I don't want to alarm you, but I think something's wrong. And, I hope nothing, I hope this is just an inconvenience to you. But, I would ask that you please go to Carl's house and let the police officer in." So that's what happened. Then the police officer called me back, and I'm on the phone with the police officer when they made entry into the house. And then I actually, unfortunately, I heard, Carl's dad's reaction through the phone.
And that was the end for Carl.
It was. So at that point, it was surreal, numbing. Sorry.
I want to thank you for coming today.
Mm-hmm.
Ross?
How are you, sir?
Thank you.
Now, on direct, you said Carl had a type, exotic or international?
Well, it's just the last 2 or 3 girls that he'd gone out with. One, he was very fond of a girl that was from Peru, and that didn't work out. And then there was a girl that he dated that was German, and again, it wasn't what he was looking for. And then this third person was very similar to the Peruvian girl, and so we knew that that was kind of the person, the type.
So the Peruvian girl, was her name Carla de Castillo?
Yes.
Okay, and the third girl you said was Mrs. Hoerig?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
We would thank the witness.
Thank you very much. You're excused. Does the state have any further witnesses?
Your Honor, we have no further witnesses at this time.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude the state's case. I have some matters I have to deal with counsel outside of your presence. That's going to take a period of time to get done. I think by agreement we're going to continue this case until Tuesday to start back up again, and the defense will have an opportunity to go forward at that time. Now remember, Monday is a holiday, so we're not here on Monday. Tuesday the court has some other things not related to this case I have to do in the morning, so we will start at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. So everyone stay warm this weekend. Do not discuss this case among yourselves with anyone else. Do not form or express an opinion. Avoid any media, written or video, internet, and don't discuss it with your family and friends. Have a nice warm weekend, and I'll see you next week.